So, we're finally here. After one of the most grueling and scorching summers I've ever lived through, or at least have lived through so far, the temperature's starting to cool down. The leaves are turning yellow and cluttering the streets. A Spirit Halloween just moved into a failed local business's building. It's pumpkin spice fall menu time at Starbucks. That shit white women go rabid over. It's finally autumn. And my favorite time of the year, spooky season, is just around the corner. Or it's already here, depending on when I get this video finished and uploaded. So carve up them pumpkins, get your costumes together, buy that candy for them trick-or-treaters, or just leave a bowl outside of your house for some fat, selfish piece of shit to steal. And of course, it's that time to curl up at home with some snacks and a warm fire going or something, and watch some scary movies. Now of course, when it's closer to Halloween time, you gotta bust out the classics. John Carpenter's original masterpiece is the definitive film about the holiday, and it's also a great time double featuring it with the much lesser but still really fun sequel, which takes place the exact same night as the first, like picking up the second the first ends. I kinda love Halloween 2, and the absolute bizarre Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is also a really fun ride, and is another perfect watch for the season. And Michael Dougherty's Trick or Treat is probably the most Halloween-themed film that's ever been made. I love this movie to death, and it's absolutely the perfect film to watch this time of year. It totally earns its status as a modern classic, but these films are the obvious picks. Of course, you could always see what's in theaters. There's usually a wide variety of new horror flicks around spooky season. Earlier we got The Nun 2, which is a big ol' steaming pile of dog shit. We got Saw X, or Socks, which I'm admittedly really excited for. There's also The Exorcist Believer, which I'm kind of low-key excited for. And towards the end of the month, there's Five Nights at Freddy's, a film that I'm sure is gonna be great. But let's be real, I don't particularly think that any of these movies are gonna give you much to chew on thematically, or offer you a totally new experience, or leave you blown away by the filmmaking. For this video, I wanted to recommend some smaller, lesser-known horror films that have escaped or have been spared from mainstream attention, so don't expect The Conjuring or Paranormal Activity on here. These next 10 movies are all films that I love, each for different reasons, but depending on your taste, you might feel the same way about them or absolutely despise them. So listen to what I have to say about them and see if they interest you. First up on this list is David Pryor's The Empty Man from 2020. Now this is such a unique and incredible film that was done so dirty by its distribution. Basically, this was one of the last movies produced by 20th Century Fox directly before the Disney acquisition a few years back, and the movie was shelved because Disney had no fucking idea how to market and release this nearly 2.5 hour long, slow burn horror thriller to the general public. So when COVID came around, they gave it an extremely limited theatrical run and then dumped it on streaming, which is such a fucking travesty because this movie is so fucking good. I really feel like if it were given a full theatrical due before the pandemic, it would be just as big and talked about as much as movies like Hereditary and Midsommar were. This film follows a retired cop who investigates a series of teenagers randomly dying off or committing suicide that seems to be linked back to an urban legend known as the Empty Man. Don't let the corny, creepypasta-like description fool you. This is an impeccably well-made film. It's strongly directed and legitimately fucking terrifying at points. It's a super ambitious mishmash of J-horror thriller influences mixed with cosmic Lovecraftian terror. Every moment from its 20-minute long prologue sequence that basically makes up an entire short film on its own, throughout the rest is a masterclass of creating a darkly intense and grim atmosphere that crawls under your skin and gets into your head, that refuses to leave from long after you've finished watching. It's a film that will leave you with many unanswered questions, but it rewards rewatches and digging deeper into its complicated but satisfying story. I would go as far as to say this is a modern horror masterpiece, so do yourself a favor and check it out. Tenebre, or Tenebre, I'm not really sure how to say it, from 1982 is an Italian giallo directed by horror legend Dario Argento, and it's a total blast. It's about an American horror writer who is on vacation in Rome who gets caught up in a murder investigation when an unknown serial killer starts offing people in ways that reflect murders that were in his own books. I would say that this is the absolute pinnacle of the Italian horror giallo subgenre, and all of its classic staples are on full blast here. You got the hilarious overacting with bad English dubbing, an iconic black-gloved killer, that widely excessive bright red blood spraying all over the place, gratuitous nudity, a total bop of a soundtrack that is both hilariously out of place and yet so perfectly suits this film's wacky vibe. And I recommend it to anyone looking to watch something a little more unconventional and just a little weird in general. It's Dario Argento working at the top of his game, and I highly recommend it. Audition is a Japanese horror thriller drama mishmash from 1999 and was directed by Takashi Miike, another legend with over 100 directed films under his name. But most people you ask will say Audition is his best. It's about a businessman who, reeling from the death of his wife, is looking to get back out into the dating world, and he's asked by a friend to sit in on an audition for a TV series to see if he's interested in any of the women there. And there's one woman named Asami who strongly catches his attention. And that's all I'm gonna say, because this is a film best going into it knowing as little as possible about it. Now, as a warning, this is a very slow film. It's very meticulously paced and constructed, and it will definitely test your patience at points. But the way the whole story comes together, especially towards the end, with some of the most incredible payoffs I've ever seen in a horror film, trust me, it is completely worth the wait. It's brilliantly directed, acted, well written, and it will make you feel really, really gross. But in a good way. So check it out. Now don't get me wrong, I do love the original 1977 Suspiria from Dario Argento, whose other film, Tenebre, or Tenebre, is on here. But the 2018 remake from Luca Guadagnino, in my opinion, is the far superior film, and also not one a lot of people talk about. I feel like it kind of gets swept under the rug since remakes, particularly horror remakes, get a deservedly bad reputation, but Suspiria is an entirely different beast, and Luca basically just uses the skeleton and some basic plot points from the original, and the rest of the film is entirely its own thing. It's about a young woman who gets accepted into a dance studio she's always wanted to be a part of, and discovers the people in charge of the studio may be witches. This film feels like something that would have come out in the 70s or 80s during the golden age of highly artistic horror films such as The Shining or The Exorcist. It's gorgeously shot and directed. Every performance is stellar, especially from Tilda Swinton, who plays multiple different people throughout the film, including an older man. It's a massive, sprawling, operatic, emotional, and beautiful, beautiful film. There are so many incredible moments that have lived completely rent-free in my head ever since I first watched it. It is a pretty divisive film, a lot of people just don't connect with it, and I agree it has its flaws. I do think it may be about 10 minutes overlong, but in light of everything it achieves for me, it pretty much is everything I'm looking for in a movie. And you might feel the same way about it as I do, so check it out. Possession from 1981 was directed by, oh boy, here we go, Andrzej Kowalski, and is the most harrowing story of marriage that has ever been made. Be warned, this is a deeply disturbing and harrowing film that will fuck you up in many different ways. It's about a spy in West Berlin during the Cold War who, upon his arrival home after a mission, discovers his wife has been having an affair with him, which launches an investigation to see what's really going on, and he uncovers something much more evil and sinister that's been going on with his wife. Just like Audition, the less you know the better, and Possession from beginning to end is an abrasive assault on the viewer that cuts deep and isn't afraid to take the audience into some dark, sinister places. It's an expressive tour de force that will leave you gasping for air by the time it's over. Seriously, y'all, this movie is crazy. And if you watch it for any singular reason, let it be for Isabelle Adjani's unreal performance. She is so ferocious in this film, it's really remarkable. Check it out! Next up is Cure from 1997, and is from director Kiyoshi Kurosawa, and is the second of 4 Japanese films on this list. I debated including this on here since it's more of a psychological thriller rather than a straight-up horror movie, but it is creepy as fuck. It's about a string of connected killings terrorizing Tokyo, where after each killing, the murderer is found near the victim, but remembers nothing about killing them, and a detective teamed up with a psychologist have to make sense of it all and find who's ultimately responsible for everything. Cure is a film that is intentionally crafted to burrow into your head and into your psyche. It casts you in a hypnotic trance and sucks you in. It's meticulously constructed and paced. Every little moment, down to each individual cut, feels purposeful and intentional. It is a little slower paced compared to what modern audiences are used to nowadays, but it's all the more effective because of it. Definitely check this one out. The Last Exorcism from 2010 and directed by Daniel Stamm is by all means a film that shouldn't be anything special. It's a found footage horror film that was made at the time found footage horror was the most massively oversaturated subgenre in Hollywood. It's also an exorcism movie, and Lord knows how disgustingly oversaturated that genre is. But The Last Exorcism stands out so far among its peers, and I think it's kinda great. It's about a documentary crew following around a priest who recently lost his faith, named Marcus, played by Patrick Fabian of Better Call Saul fame.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
Who is so good in this, as he makes it his goal to expose exorcism as the out-of-date hoax that it is, which brings him to a Louisiana farm in which he pretends to perform an exorcism on a girl who is claimed to be possessed. Only it seems that there may be something more real at play here involving her possession. This film really has a lot of interesting things to say about the concept of faith and how it affects different people, whether it can be a legitimate guiding source of inspiration or just a tool for brainwashing. It asks the audience a lot of interesting questions and it really gets you to think. And on top of it all, it's a pretty damn creepy movie, and has a truly memorable finale that still has people split over whether they love it or hate it. And it's also super short, so check it out. May is a film from 2002 and was directed by Lucky McGee. Now this is a total hidden early 2000s gem. It's a fantastically done, very entertaining character study with an all-timer performance from Angela Bettis. It follows the titular May, a socially awkward young adult who falls in love with and subsequently becomes romantically obsessed with a mechanic, played by that guy from 6 Feet Under. The way that this film deals with topics like loneliness and intimacy are handled with a level of care and nuance that you rarely see from the genre, and I feel it's a film that many people can easily find aspects to deeply connect to and relate to. However, don't let its looks deceive you, because this is a deeply disturbing and twisted film as well. Once again, it's a film that is better the less you know about it, which is why I kept the plot description, along with this whole segment, pretty brief. So just take my word for it, it's a really incredible film. It's definitely one of my favorite films on this list, and just one of my favorite movies in general. You'll laugh, you'll be creeped the fuck out, and you may even cry, and you should really check it out. Just don't watch any trailers for it, because the only ones I've seen just completely spoil it. Now, let me make it clear that all the movies on this list aren't particularly masterfully directed, perfectly constructed horror masterpieces. Suicide Club is a 2001 Japanese horror thriller mystery from Sion Sono, one of Japan's most notorious and controversial filmmakers. It's about a massive-scale hysteria that strikes Japan, causing thousands of random people to commit suicide for no reason, after 54 high school girls throw themselves in front of a subway train. And all this may be tied to a new J-pop group that's suddenly on the rise in terms of popularity. This is a weird fucking movie, and it's all the more memorable for it. It completely relishes in its total splatterfest absurdity and takes so much delightful, twisted glee from its insanity. There's a lot of social and political commentary that pertain exclusively to Japan that'll go over most Westerners' heads, but it has a lot of interesting statements to make about the rise of the digital era and internet that feel very at home with the early 2000s when it came out, but a lot of what the film has to say about society really hold up. Obviously, considering the subject matter, I have to say it's not even remotely for the faint of heart, but if you're like me, a fucking weirdo who craves this absurdist, bizarro shit, I can tell you I have strongly grown to love this film, despite it being very far from perfect. So maybe check it out. I don't know. it just depends on what you like. And for the last film on this list, I'm recommending 1977's from Nobuhiko Obayashi. Now this film has garnered quite a legendary cult status over the years, and for good reason. This shit is fucking crazy. On pure visual stimulation alone, this movie has enough to captivate and entertain anyone to no end. It's about a girl and her friends who visit her aunt's ancestral house in the countryside, and it turns out to be haunted, and some wild fucking shenanigans occur. This film is definitely best watched with a big group of friends. Some substance abuse is optional, and it's just a total blast. It's lighthearted, it's fun as fuck. Put it on, turn your brain off, and just let this movie's insanity wash over you. Definitely check this one out. So there we have it. 10 horror films that I highly recommend checking out this Halloween season. I'll include where you can find each of these films in the description below. Most can be found on the usual streaming services. I know Shudder has a few, but some others will be a bit harder to find. However, just know that there are always ways. So check out any or all of these, depending on if they sound interesting to you. And if you do watch any of these, leave a comment. Let me know. Let me know how you liked them. Even if you fucking hated one of these movies, which you very might will, I want to know. Have a great Halloween season, everyone, and as always, thank you for watching.